of Adventure. This is episode 186 with Scot McKay. The Art of Adventure is the podcast that helps you travel the world, run your business, and embark on an epic quest. I'm your host, lead explorer, and guide, Derek Loudermilk. Head over to derekloudermilk.com to check out the show notes and sign up for your free guide to the top 10 ways to make money online while traveling the world. On today's episode, we have my good friend, Scot McKay. Scot is known as the #1 dating coach in America. And we met a few years back when we were roommates at a men's conference. And we hit it off right away. I was just blown away by the stories that he told and how funny and entertaining he is. And you guys will definitely hear that on this episode. He's also a big inspiration because he's taken his family all over the world, including traveling with his kids to over 100 countries. So he's very adventurous. They even have a podcast about that called Wing It Worldwide, which you can check out. In this episode, we're going to cover a whole lot of interesting topics, including the wilderness inside of all of us, how life purpose evolves. For example, he's now supporting his family as champion BMX racer, and he used to be quite a champion BMX racer himself. So he talks about how he became one of the top podcasters in the world by being an early adopter of the technology and building the right partnerships. He talks a little bit about how he runs his business, how he repurposes content, what his team looks like, and how he has grown and promoted his work throughout the years. He talks about values and beliefs and how you can put people at ease. And that's a great quality as an adventurer. So there's really a ton here. I know you're going to get a lot out of it. So let's jump right in to the interview with Scot McKay. Welcome back to the Art of Adventure. I'm here with Scot McKay. Welcome to the show, Scot.
Hey, Derek. Thanks for inviting me. This is going to be fun.
This is going to be fun, and I'm kind of surprised that you haven't been on the Art of Adventure yet. And, you know, we've known each other for a little over a year, I guess. But it feels like I've known you for longer because it feels like you're a kindred spirit. You do a lot of family adventures with your wife and kids. And now that I have a kid, you know, I sort of model some of what I'm doing after you. So what's the latest adventure you've been up to with your family?
Well, first of all, man, I'm honored to hear that. I would have to say, you know, our family, we've just decided intentionally to be adventurers. We decided we didn't want to sit at home and watch life happen on TV. We wanted to go out and create our own adventures. And equally importantly, not only for ourselves, but we wanted to introduce our children to a life of adventure very early. So to answer your question, you know what we've been doing this year, Derek? We've been going BMX racing.
Wow.
That's our adventure. I don't know what the equivalent French term for du jour is of the whole year instead of the day, but our adventure du jour has been to go bicycle motocross racing, which is something that's deeply rooted in my history. And I had actually retired from it and gone on to other cool adventures. And my son saw bicycles hanging up in the garage and said, "Hey, you know what, Dad? I think I'm ready to try that thing you used to do." And the next thing you know, Emily she decided that it would be cool to have a pink bike and to go race all the other mamas out there. And they have a mama class, which is pretty cool. And the next thing you know, when we first started, the 3.5-year-old sister was like, and me, you know, little guitar. Wow. And so Sarah was on one of those little push bike striders, and she just absolutely was champing at the bit to get on pedals. And so she started racing at 4, and she just turned expert before she even is, you know, like officially 2 weeks before kindergarten starts here in Texas. And so she's an expert class for 5 and under girls, and there's only like a couple dozen of those kids in the whole United States. And it's just almost overwhelming because she just took to this sport like a duck to water, and she just wants to ride her bike and do sprints and ride rollers. And now she's begging for clip pedals, which is going to be another whole adventure for a 5-year-old. But yeah, that's what we've been doing. And Mom and Sarah made Team USA this year and represented the country at the World Championships. And we don't have any world champions in the family, but, you know, give them time.
Wow.
And John, he's 9 years old. He's up class from novice to intermediate. He's doing great. He's kind of more of a soul surfer kind of BMXer. He just goes out and hangs out with his friends and has fun. It's tougher for 9-year-old boys because, you know, there's hundreds and hundreds of them. but he's good at it and he enjoys it. And I have gone weirdly from being a racer myself on the national level to being retired from it for lots of years now to being what they call factory dad. So, I'm the chief strategist behind our home BMX team, which sometimes comes in handy, and I'm the one who knows how to fix the bikes and everything. And I got to tell you, I'm having more fun with this particular sport and this particular adventure phase of it than I think I ever have, even when I was racing. So it's just funny how you go from adventure to adventure in life. And this year, the season of this television show this year for our family is going BMX racing.
So how does it feel you're not racing right now, is that correct?
Well, I have like my license and I have a number plate and I've raced like once in the last 6 months, but the funny thing is, when you go to like big races, they run the motos very quickly. And my wife and my daughter are very quick in succession, and I would be in the middle of them if I were racing. Mm-hmm. And one of the things is when you have 5 and under riders, even regardless of their skill level, the rule is 5 and under kids, you can assist them in the gate. So I'm always up there with Sarah, giving her a pep talk and holding her rear wheel when the gate drops and stuff. She can balance herself, but it's just an advantage to be able to do that while you can. So I've also, not to go into it too deeply, but I had a lot of fun in the sport and ran a team and turned expert and rode nationals and that. And I feel like I've accomplished enough for myself in that sport without having anything more to prove. And I'm really, honestly, Derek, just enjoying watching the kids and watching Emily compete and cheering them on. It's just a lot of fun. I mean, there's nothing cuter than 5 and under BMX races. First of all,
I could imagine.
And if you could imagine like the 5 and under expert girl class, all these little, they're like little 5-year-old Tomb Raider girls. Okay. They all have like pink bikes and they're all very girly, but they're the grittiest, toughest, adventurous little badass girls you've ever seen in your entire life. And they all hang around each other and trade Hello Kitty stickers and have ponytails and hold hands and swing each other around and giggle and laugh. And then they get on the gate and then they just are amazing. They're little motocrossers. And I'm so fascinated by that. And the parents are great and the families are incredible. And it's just a really cool vibe. And I'm just enjoying experiencing it in that different way nowadays,
Yeah, so your son, he saw the bikes and decided to start doing that.
Yeah, right.
And I often wonder, like how, like people's dreams that they have, like, is it a dream that they picked up from someone else? Was it like a dream that they just took on, that someone else was dreaming for them, or if it's like a dream that they cultivated themselves? So what do you think the story is for your family? Like, how did it happen to be that this year is the year that everyone decided to do that?
Well, I think that's a really fascinating idea you're talking about. Emily and I decided we weren't going to push the children to do what we like to do. Now, there's limits to that because, as we talked about on your other podcast, we world school our children. And so, yeah, we do take them on the trips that we've planned for them worldwide. But, if the kids were really averse to that or they didn't respond well to it, I think we would change course, and they actually adore it. So I think some leadership as a mom and dad into the world of adventure is fair because, they're just little kids. You have to give them a scope to look through. But, what happened also here in town, just to give you a kind of an example from the other side of the coin, is they built one of those indoor skydiving facilities in a very prominent location near our neighborhood, down where the tourist stuff happens here in San Antonio. Oh yeah. And they wanted to try that really badly. And so we let them try it and they took to that like a duck, a duck takes to water. And that wasn't my thing at all, and they've gone and done the lessons and Sarah's starting to do little spins and everything as a 5-year-old. Yet another thing she did before kindergarten is go indoor skydiving and get good at it. And that was something they decided to do, and we supported them in that. And we've told John, and we have other kids too who are older now. Whatever you want to do, whatever you're passionate about, as long as it's not detrimental to your health or anybody else's, we'll support you in it. Sometimes John likes to do talking and speaking, and he's really ready to do a TEDx youth talk by the time he's 12. He wishes he could do it now. He wants, he wants to start his own podcast. He's dabbling with a YouTube channel and all that stuff. And so he's into that kind of stuff too, which of course is adventurous in its own way. But, just introducing them to different things where they can really find their skills and their passions and what they're good at and really, make the most of that is amazing to watch. And I think a lot of parents, they want their kid to do the same sport they did and go to the same college they did. And yet, your own scope broadens so much when you see what these little human beings from your own gene pool come up with as cool ideas. Because sometimes it challenges you to think, hey, you know what, that is pretty cool. I think I'd like to watch my kid do that. So that's happened also. But yeah, there's no doubt that we've done some cool stuff in this family, and the kids are like, yeah, I think I'm ready to give that a shot on my own. I think I'd like to try it. And of course, that's been traveling and bicycling and playing guitar. Some of the music that we have going on in our family, the kids gravitate towards that. But I think it's a mistake to try to push them or leverage it. A little patience goes a long way, and then they start seeing the stuff around your house and go, hey, what's this? Let's do that. Let's try it. So
did you ever have like a script written for yourself that you then realized wasn't the right script for you, or just were you ever on autopilot, or how did your life arrive at the point where you are today? Because for people that don't know, Scott, you've been a dating coach for 10 years. How long?
That's going on 12.
12 years, yeah.
Which is like dog years in this business,
Yeah, you could be a dating coach in 3 months and. Yeah. Right,
exactly. I mean, so many people have come and gone. I mean, even like big names and gone to something else or just disappeared. So, the cadre of us who've been doing this for over a decade is shrinking. So it's good to be here.
Yeah. Did you always like how did you end up there? Because, dating coach really isn't like something that they advertise as a possibility.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's funny how everything I've done since probably before 2000, for the last 20 years, everything I've done with my life professionally, Derek, is something you couldn't even have majored in or studied when I went to college. I graduated from college in 88. None of what I've been doing was ever even a factor or even on the radar screen when I was in college. So yeah, to answer your broader question about had there kind of been seasons to this and have I found myself on autopilot and gotten out of it. Heck yeah, man. I mean, I don't know how far back to go. I started out with a pretty profound illness when I was very young that left me, for lack of a better word, sickly. And my parents said, okay, well, he's really, really smart, and so let's focus on academics and kind of turn him away from athletics. But I wanted to go out and I wanted to compete. And I fell in love with bicycle motocross racing back when it was the heyday, the golden age of the sport back in the early 80s, And I wanted to do that really badly. But my parents were like, oh, no, you're going to be, an academic type. And of course, I mean, I was capable of doing that. I would do very well on the standardized tests and all that, that stuff. But it wasn't my passion. And I wanted to do something else other than go to private school and be smart because, that's not really it's not helpful socially either, because all the cool kids I noticed weren't necessarily focusing on studying, and of course it's important to be educated and all that. But the kids who seemed like they were enjoying life most when I was a teenager were out doing stuff and they were capable of things other than studying and they knew how to interact with each other a lot better than I was capable of doing. So by the time I went to college, I knew I wanted to do those other things. I knew I always was the person in our family who didn't want to watch it on TV. I didn't want to live in the suburbs. I didn't want to drive, today's equivalent of a Toyota Camry around. I wanted to be the guy. I mean, I delivered pizzas all summer in 1987 and bought a Suzuki Samurai because back then that was like a cheap little vehicle that was still cool and adventurous, and I wanted one so badly when they came out. I don't think we really have anything like that in the automotive world now where you can spend like the entry level amount of money to get a vehicle and actually have something very cool like that. But they were like a little Jeep. They were a little Japanese Jeep. You could take the roof off and girls loved them. And, you could strap your surfboard to the roof. And I went from BMXing to surfing in college, and I started really finding myself. But I think it wasn't until I said to my parents, I'm moving from the East Coast out to Yuma, Arizona, and fulfilled on the dream of buying my first sport bike, which was a Yamaha, FZR 600, and learning how to really ride those, and ended up racing those. And that became my passion. And then, I really didn't, my career was always focused on what's now today known as coaching. But back then I was working in intervention with kids who were involved with gangs and kids who needed to be put on the right track when they were going down the wrong track. And that's what I was doing in Arizona. But those days were like among the happiest days of my entire life. And I remember I didn't have any money. I mean, I think I spent like a third of my entire income on motorcycles.
Sounds familiar.
Right. And the rest, was rent and ramen noodles in Jack in the Box,
Hey, everybody loves ramen.
Everybody loves ramen. And, it was wonderful going fast and knee dragging motorcycles. And then, I moved to Texas and got married for the first time and decided I didn't want to be a jerk at my own funeral. So I didn't want to road race motorcycles anymore. And I wasn't racing anything and I was miserable. And my wife said, what about that thing you used to do when you were a kid? I was like, you mean the BMXing? It's like, well, that's for little kids. And she's like, well, there's an internet. Why don't you look it up? There's this new thing called the internet. See and next thing you know, the biggest class in the whole country, Derek, is 31 to 35-year-old guys on 24-inch wheels. I was like, cool. So then I got passionate.
Everybody reliving their childhood dreams.
Right. Next thing you know, life changes. I met Emily. For all those years, I was involved helping schools and libraries build out their internet infrastructure, and that was where my job took me. So my job changed and my passions changed. Then I decided I got sick of making, Fortune 50 companies rich and decided I wanted to go back to my roots to helping people. And that was about the time I'd gone through a rough divorce and decided I wanted to get better with women than I ever had and have a better relationship. And that was working out great, and that was an adventure. And then I met Emily, and we decided to go camping and go traveling the world and then make these cute little babies and take them around the world with us. And what do you know? We're back BMXing. Isn't it amazing how you come full circle and then back again and full circle again? And it seems like that BMXing has been a constant in my life, but sort of in a revolving way. I leave it and I come back. It's almost like The Godfather. I keep trying to get out and they keep dragging me back in. But there's all these other things too, the traveling and even surfing and the motorcycling. All those things that kind of get in your blood and then they don't ever really get out. They can lie dormant for a while, but then it flares up again. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, and thanks for giving the longer history, because I think it's nice to have that perspective of doors opening and opportunities and like cycles and season. You mentioned like the TV season of your family.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, and so I think at times you can be like, oh, this is my only opportunity in life. I have to seize it. And like, yes, obviously seize opportunities, but you will keep encountering more, and sometimes the same opportunities will be slightly different in the future.
Well, one of the things I think comes to mind as you're commenting on that is something that comes up even in my coaching practice. I think people think about their life purpose and what am I here to do? And they treat it like it's a monolith, like it's this one big thing. And I'll tell you, my purpose when I was a young man, I felt like was, helping those kids get on track. And I'll tell you something, Derek, I was stubborn, outlived my usefulness in that profession by about 2 years before I finally got out of it.
Interesting.
My best work and my most passionate feelings towards that work were behind me. And I wanted a new challenge. I needed a new purpose. And so I went and, I've had at least 3 different careers, depending on how narrowly you define it. And they've all been complete career changes. And my purpose, my life purpose has been redefined, I think, as I've outlived my usefulness in accomplishing the purpose that I was there to do. I think you can accomplish a life purpose and move on to another one. I think you can have multiple life purposes at the same time. I mean, is my life purpose right now to be a dating coach? Is it to travel the world and be adventurous? Is it to, be factory dad for these BMXers? I think it's a combination of all those things. I think you can be multidimensional, and you can also accomplish a life purpose and move on to another challenge that you're passionate about more now than you were before. But all of that said, I still do believe that when something grabs you, it can have seasons where it's a bigger part of your life or not, but I don't think it really ever gets out of your blood. Like this year, Emily and I have yet to do an international trip, and it's August. I'm sure everybody's thinking like, oh my gosh, this year. But, our history for the past 8 years is going on 3 or 4 a year, and then taking the camper out for a month and just going exploring. So that is very different for us, and I'm missing it. I would love to pack up and leave and go to the Estans or to West Africa and go places I haven't been before. I'm itching to do it again. But, a little patience goes a long way, and you enjoy where you are and the adventure that you're doing now. And it comes a point where you just have so many things stacked up that you love to do and are interested in doing that you can't do them all at the same time. You can only be in one place. And Emily and I have a bucket list that's got over 200 things on it. And I mean, the caveat there is we are continually crossing things off the bucket list and adding things to it.
Sounds like my reading list.
Right. Exactly. I know you have a famous reading list. You're very well read. But yeah, I think you get my point. I mean, it's one of those things where, you have seasons, but I think a lot of times people get kind of narrowly focused in terms of purpose and what adventure should I be on, when really it can be a little more complex and it can evolve over time.
So you're talking about, you have a history of leaving for international trips multiple times a year, and heard a story about you running a coaching call from somewhere in the middle of nowhere in Africa. And, when we met, it was because we were roommates at at Justin's Elite Man Conference.
Sure.
So I know you're speaking, you host a couple podcasts, you're a dating coach, but I'm just curious, like, what is the structure of your business and how does that afford you the ability to leave multiple times a year on international trips?
Yeah, sure. Well, we've always thought about structuring the business X and Y Communications, even from its very conception, to afford us freedom. We wanted to be location independent, which of course is the buzzword. I personally have never wanted a bunch of employees and a bunch of overhead in a warehouse somewhere to worry about. I've always kind of instinctively known from my days as an employee that the biggest troubles you're going to have in business that you don't feel like doing are going to be financial, which of course you can't avoid that because you're going to make money. You're going to have to figure out what to do with it and how to pay taxes and everything. So that one's gonna happen. But the things I can handle are headcount, which is a very crass term for the people who work for your company. Having employees, that's always something that takes up a lot of time and causes a lot of stress. And also supply chain, having things in the warehouse, last in, first out, knowing what to manufacture, how much to keep on, all of that is just nightmarish. I don't want to do those things. So I built my business around outsourcing just about everything that Emily and I are uniquely good at, and then not having any physical product. Everything's digital. It's all intellectual capital. It's all coaching. We do a lot of info products. The info products allow us, they afford us the luxury to not have to sell time for money and do coaching. I actually love doing coaching. So I'm still doing the coaching because I want to, not because I have to. Mm-hmm. And I do enough of it that it doesn't fill my whole day up with coaching calls. I know other coaches who do that. But we do affiliate marketing, and we have really great info products that people adore. So a lot of that. So once you've done this wonderful project and spent a lot of time and blood, sweat, and tears on it, and you put the product out in the market, then it can just keep on. It can stay on the market, and then that heavy lifting's done, and then it just sells. And that's what we structure our business around, that the Cooppetition of working with like-minded other dating coaches and people in the men's and women's self-help market in general to market their products for them and get affiliate commission off of that. So we do a lot of email marketing. The podcasting, of course, is something I love doing. and everything that supports that, social media, YouTube, blah, blah, blah. And what that does is all of that can be done from just about anywhere in the world. So yeah, I do have coaching calls with guys, and I don't usually bore them with where I'm talking to them from. If they want to think I'm, it's irrelevant to the meat and potatoes of coaching. So I don't say like, good morning Vietnam to guys if I'm sitting in Saigon. I just, they're funny stories about that, because one time I was doing a coaching call in Beijing, and Beijing's anywhere on the Pacific Rim is a wonderful place to be, because you can have your breakfast while coaching guys in their evening time back in the United States. Mm-hmm. And I was talking to a guy in Philadelphia, and I was having my breakfast in a hutong in Beijing, and a lady came up to me and started talking to me in Mandarin, and I answered her in my limited pidgin Mandarin, and he was like, W. I'm like, oh, well, she's just asking me if I want more tea or if I want to switch to coffee. And he's like, where are you? I said, well, I'm in China. He goes, you're in where? Then of course, it's like a needle on a record scratching. It's like, what are you doing there? It's like, what time is it? They always ask.
Yeah. That's great. So what time is it?
It hijacks the call. You might as well just keep focused on that. But I mean, I've had coaching calls where, we had wildlife issues in the middle of the call. The one that you mentioned in Africa, I actually had to wake up and have the hotel help me hook up the internet. I had to pay them extra in the middle of the night to have the call. And I sat on the back porch overlooking, the Rift Valley. It was gorgeous in the middle of the night. And you could hear the animals off in the distance. And then it just started absolutely torrentially raining. That's when I had to go inside. And he's like, where are you? I'm like, well, it just started raining. I was outside, He's like, well, okay. Why is your internet so good? I was like, well, I have to break it to you. I'm sort of in Ethiopia. So
that's great.
It's really funny. But I don't, I'm one of those guys. I have enough going on, and I have so little to prove nowadays that I really just kind of don't bore people with those details. I just do my job with them. I think it's great that we have a forum like this where people actually are tuning in to hear about adventure, and I think that's great. But talking about our travels and talking about our adventures, I've noticed that people who aren't into the same thing you are really, they don't care. They don't want to hear about it. You have to find your like-minded people, and a lot of people are watching it on TV and they wish they could go have an adventure. They don't know how, or they don't have the wherewithal. They don't have the personality type. So when you start talking about the stuff you've been doing or mentioning it, et cetera, it just doesn't help you make friends and influence people. So I always stick to what people want to talk about, what they want to learn about. And if they've hired me to coach them, let's talk about them and how awesome we can make them into as human beings and the kind of great girlfriend or boyfriend they can get. And that's what we usually focus on. And sometimes in the newsletters and when interacting with people, I think it's important to show your personal side and build relationships with the people on your newsletter list and everything. But I think there comes a point where, you do have to stick on topic with it. And that's what we try to do. But yeah, being location independent and being all over the world does present its challenges to doing, to business flow. But I think that's, you're along for the ride, and that's a part of it, and you have to expect it. I think that's part of what builds grit and determination in the kids too, is, we're going to have to get up at 4:00, catch a plane to the next place, and it's raining and it's cold or it's too hot. People are weird and the food's strange, and, the kids have to learn and they have to adjust, and and their character gets built by it. It's all worth it.
I want to ask you about this term Cooppetition, you said?
Yeah, sure. It's kind of fallen out of vogue, isn't it? It's like a buzzword 10, 15 years ago.
This is the first I've heard of it.
Really? Okay.
So it's cooperation and competition mashed up. How do you handle that? And I assume that since you guys are promoting each other's products, that's probably helped you grow as well.
Well, I mean, I think for a great example of cooppetition where people can really relate to it would be like professional sports. Like if you're an NBA fan, you may love your team, and your team is its own organization, but they're also sanctioned by the NBA. They're all a part of this league. So sometimes you'll find like in baseball, a couple of the teams have struggled, or the football teams, or even in the NBA, they can't bring people out to watch the games. And the owners of all the teams, who are independent entities, of course, will all get together and try to save that team. What can we do to get people to go to that game? because it's in their best interest that all those teams succeed. And indeed, if you're the San Antonio Spurs, you need to play. You need someone to play. You need the Golden State Warriors. I mean, you may be getting sick of getting beaten by them the last few years, but you still need them. And you also need the Milwaukee Bucks, and you need, the Phoenix Suns. They all need each other, even though they're separate business entities. Because, if you try to run a one-team league, you're screwed. It's unless you're the Harlem Globetrotters, I guess. But that's for entertainment. But you can see my point. Those teams need each other, even though they're competing against each other, literally. In my business as a dating coach, it's amazing how a lot of it is personality driven. So someone may resonate with one person's view on things, their approach on things, or even their personality or their energy more than they will someone else. Also, people who are looking to get better tend not to be consumers of just one person's thought process, but they'll be consumers of different thought leaders. So how I've always viewed it is, I think if we get together and as people who are in the dating coaching field, for example, and we help build each other's quote unquote star power, I think everybody wins. Everybody is more powerful at that point. The people who have come into this field and tried to isolate themselves and denigrate other people's work and say, well, this person's all wrong and I'm going to show you why and my way is better. And they get real provincial about it and almost dogmatic about what their way of doing things compared to somebody else's. They're very fly by night. They don't last long. None of them have. The people who are still here are the people who have actively promoted each other's work and have done what I refer to as affiliate marketing, which is, you sign up for their affiliate program, you're handed a link, and every time a sale is made from that link, you get paid commission on it, right? Having each other on our podcasts. I've had every thought leader in the dating coaching world on my podcast before. And you've been on my podcast too. We talk about men's issues on a broader scale on the mountaintop now. But that whole idea of I'm not the only person out here who can give you dating advice, and that's okay, is actually something that feeds everybody. I'm reminded of a magazine that was produced in the late 70s and early to mid 80s that was for the same sport we've been talking about, which is bicycle motocross. And the guy who was the editor, the founder and editor of that magazine, basically built the sport. He's widely credited as building the sport because he took a bunch of 17-year-old kids in California and turned them into superheroes with the way he wrote about them. Like he would cover a race in Southern California and say, this guy is the mighty, give him nicknames and this guy was, all conquering today. And, you can only hope to be as fast as this guy. Use colorful language. And then, this created interest in those kids. And so the sponsors sponsored the kids made what they were writing and wearing cool, and then the product started to sell, the sport built, and he just kept basically promoting how cool the products were and how the people were in it, and his magazine grew and everybody was happy. It was just building star power. It was giving it away. And I think that's what the people in our industry, in our little niche, have been very good at doing for each other, as long as they understand the flow and the vibe of it and they get it. Some people don't get it. I mean, you can email for somebody's product and say, hey, you know what? I think this guy is the greatest teacher on how to be more confident I've ever met. You should go. I give them my full recommendation. And then it's that person's time to mail for you. And they go, yeah, well, my stuff's better than theirs, but if you like it, buy it. It's like, well, no, that's not how it works. You can't burn the candle on both sides. The people who have given it away, though, the people who say, hey, look, I'm having this person on my podcast because they're amazing and they're really good. And then you banter back and forth with them on the podcast about dating coaching and how to get better with members of the other gender, et cetera. And you realize both of you are good at it and you can have a very good conversation about it and everybody benefits. Those are the people who have done the best. So that's what I mean by Cooppetition. Mm-hmm. Yes, this person's shop is different than mine. Maybe someone is looking for a dating coach. They call him, they call me, and sometimes they're going to choose the other guy. Sometimes they'll choose me. But overall, if you're trying to do this as a solo mission, you're going to crash. But if you become part of this inner circle of people who all promote each other. I mean, we have masterminds. We have this very well designed at this point. Then assuming everybody's on the up and up and everybody's ethical. And, there's people who are sleazy and trying to just, take advantage of women or whatever. There's fewer of them because thankfully, people are more awake to treating each other with a lot more respect nowadays than they even were 10 years ago. But, there's people who I've made a decision I can promote and people I've made a decision I can't promote. And the people who are ethical and people who believe in respecting women and so forth and so on, people more relationship oriented. I've built very key partnerships with them over time. And it has been always to the mutual benefit. Everybody is more well known. Everybody is more popular. Everybody's podcast has more listeners. Everybody's newsletter readership grows because we pass this around. We share it. And the more of us who are saying that this particular person is worth listening to, the more people say, hey, you know what? So many people are saying this person's worth listening to. I should listen to them. Mm-hmm. And that's what, to me, Cooppetition is all about. Yes, they're not my company. They're someone else's ledger. There's someone else's revenue stream. But if we support each other, we all thrive. It's almost like if you go to a farmer's market, you need lots of vendors at that farmer's market, or else nobody's just going to show up if there's one stand and the guy's selling, bone broth, or he's selling, food or something.
Yeah.
You need the guy who's selling the bone broth, and you need the guy who's selling organic doggy biscuits, and you need the guy who's selling like aromatic oils. They need each other, even though they're all competing for the person walking around in the farmer's market. So you see this actually in more arenas and in more markets, more vertical markets than you think.
So you have quite a large reach on social media and with your podcast. What allowed you to grow that reach? What are some of the most effective things? Was it the partnerships? And was there anything that you wish you had done in the beginning?
Wow, that's such a deep question. Yes. You know what? The partnerships really have mattered. Exactly what we're talking about here. I had a couple people who were 900-pound gorillas in the niche really help me out in the early stages. They gave me a break. I mean, one in particular was almost like the equivalent for a comedian of being on the Tonight Show. And that really helped me get on the map. Emily and I did the podcast. We were very early adopters into podcasting. Our first podcast was in 2006. And I'll never forget it. We went to a local podcasting meetup group for, people in San Antonio who were starting podcasts. And when we showed up, we were received in a very interesting way. Half the people in the room just kind of went, who are these people? Kind of like wanted to pretend we didn't exist. And the other half of the people just were clamoring to meet us and were treating us like they were being a little too nice to us or something. They're asking questions. It turned out we were number one in the world in our category on iTunes. And Derek, we didn't even know it. I didn't even know what iTunes was. I mean, I just filled out everything, and I didn't have an iPod in 2006. And we filled out all the, get on. Back then they had like Podcast Pickle and Podcast Alley and all these podcasting outlets, because it was just a nascent thing. And someone, I finally sat down. I said, why are you guys asking us all these questions? We're so new to the meeting. And they looked at us, and finally people put it two and two together, and they realized we didn't know. And it just, of course, made the people who were, haters hate us even more. It's like, oh, sure, you're number one in iTunes, and, you don't even know it. I mean, we're, scrambling to even get featured. But people loved our show. And it was funny because Emily's just so cute, and we absolutely really adore each other. So when we did a relationship show, it really just resonated with the people who were looking for relationship shows because, we were walking the talk, and we weren't trying to sell anything, and we weren't, we didn't have a product yet. Both of us still had a job, and it just people started emailing us questions, and we get a couple questions, emails a day. And what I didn't realize for another 2 years, Derek, is for every 2,000 people listening to your show, you're getting an email. It's like we just figured, okay, people, we tell them to email us, they'll all email us. So all, both people listening to the show emailed me today, and when it hit me that the show was actually popular, I was also dabbling in writing newsletters, and people were starting to join the newsletter. And people started saying, you guys could do this. And I wanted to. I wanted to quit my job. I wanted to honestly, truthfully, help people find the love of their life and have a similar journey to mine. They don't have to be like me. They don't have to look like me or whatever. But I went from being devastated by my relationships with women to having amazing relationships with women and an amazing relationship with the woman in my life. And both Emily and I were passionate about helping other people do that. So I think that's where it started. And then when I got that big break, I made the very smart move. I stumbled upon this very smart move of actually contacting everybody else who had ever been on that, featured in that environment also. And all of them, of course, had become famous dating coaches and famous at this. And I did something right. I emailed them and said, hey, my turn's coming up doing this. I'm joining the fraternity, you guys. I'm pleased to meet you. How can I promote you? I've got a podcast, and what can I do for you? And I had guys write me and go, just tell me what it is you want me to sell for you. You're trying to hit my list up and no, what can I do for you? Can I tell my list about your stuff? And they're like, really? Because it was so unique to have someone not come to them with a personal selfish agenda and just say, hey, I just want to be a part of this group. I want to get to know you guys. I want to be part of the cool kids, not in a needy way, but in a humble way. How could I would be thrilled if you'd be a guest on my podcast because, you're good at this. And like, well, sure, man, I believe in free publicity. Let's get on the podcast. And I did exactly what I said I would do. And the next thing you know, these guys are saying, hey, you're pretty cool. I mean, why don't you send me whatever, your book is when you're done and I'll tell my list about it. I'm like, wow, you do that? It's like, sure. You were cool to me first. It's the law of reciprocity, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're cool to somebody else, they'll be cool towards you. And I've had relationships with some of those people for 12 years now. And we'll go to war for each other. We implicitly trust each other. So, yeah, that's been a huge part of how we've grown. Plus, we're passionate about it. We've never stopped caring. It's never been something that was felt like work. It wasn't something that we just kind of set on autopilot and went on to the next thing. We're not like in the supplement business on the side and in the dog training business on the side. This is what we love doing. Yes, we did put the travel blog out there, but that's a labor of love mostly. We love traveling, and we think adventurous people do better with members of the other gender and do better in dating, and it all kind of ties in. But yeah, those are the things that have contributed to our success. I think keeping it real and actually serving people, and kind of the cherry on top, Derek, is getting better. Always be, focusing on your skills at the service of what you provide to people, and never underestimate the power of providing good content, providing good product, and actually adding value. You can't fake that till you make it.
Yeah. When I think of you, I think of someone who's quite prolific. I know that you write a regular email newsletter and you blog and you podcast and all these things. I'm kind of curious, just how you structure your life, let's say around the BMXing or the travel, that allows you to create so much.
I'm going to go ahead and tell you a dirty little secret. I'm very good at repurposing. There comes a point where you hit critical mass on content. I have a 2-year rotation for my newsletters. If you're on my newsletter list as a man for 2 years, you'll never see the same content twice. But see, once I've told you about how to get out of the friend zone, I can sit there and I can write another whole newsletter that, the sentences are in different order or whatever, but I'm telling you the same thing. So if I've already written a newsletter on how to stay out of the friend zone, why write it all over again?
Gotcha. Yeah, I recently did something similar where I read a blog post and then record it as an episode and then have it as and then record a video for it and then have it as caption on Instagram. Like, it's all the same material.
Right. That's right. That's right on. I do original things. Like I put original YouTube out. I put, obviously the podcasts are all new. I've seen people actually recycle their own podcast episodes as like episode number 203 is a repeat of episode number 50. Mm-hmm. I don't know about that. I don't know if that's going to work. But yeah, and I do write new content. Sometimes I have a wild hair and I think of something and I present it. But I've done 10 major info products now, and they're all huge productions. Lots of video, audio, all the marketing surrounding it, the funnel, the whole thing. And I still have ideas for completely different ideas. I mean, completely different subject matter that will help men be better men, get better women, etc. The new one is something that I haven't talked about much. And I've collected new, interesting ideas on that for the better part of 3 years to come up with the content that's all new that I've never done before. That work has to be done. If you're not, you can't just stay stagnant. But the secret to doing all these podcasts, to doing the YouTube, to doing the blog and doing the newsletters and being able to go do all that we want to do is, in many ways, we've hit the critical mass of repurposing. Second of all, it's a little bit smoke and mirrors because I don't put out YouTube videos or podcasts or blog posts with near the frequency other people do. I irregularly produce just about everything. So I'm not on a hard schedule. I've always never wanted to do an actual radio show or even blog talk radio because I don't want to have to be anywhere every Thursday at 8:00.
Yeah.
I want to have more freedom than that. Even, this is really funny because people don't understand this. Even in my coaching process, I don't have an automated schedule. And every other coach in the world does. Like, you can't just access my schedule and pick a block of time. What I always tell people is give me 2 or 3 times that work for you, and I'm sure one of them will work for me. And I have control of my own schedule. I don't let a virtual assistant. I have a virtual assistant. I have 2, but they don't control my schedule. I control my schedule at all times. Personally, I don't outsource that because that's your life. And I know that's a unique point of view. And I'm sure people are listening, rolling their eyes going, dude, you should get an automated schedule and have somebody handle it for you. But I want control over my time. I don't want to give somebody this blanket of you can schedule an hour-long call with me anytime, any of these open times. And then all of a sudden I'm all fragmented. Another thing I don't do, by the way, is I do not hard schedule any appointment under a half an hour. I do not fragment my schedule with 5-minute phone calls. And I have people who want to do that. It's like, hey, I want to talk about, doing something for you or you for me. Can we talk for 5 minutes about that? Yeah, well, let's do that next Tuesday at 2:35 in the afternoon. No, just pick up the phone and call me. I'll call you back. Let's get on Skype now because it'll take 5 minutes to plan when we're going to talk. Just talk.
Yeah.
So that has been a real schedule saver is to not to shoot holes into my schedule like Swiss cheese with 5-minute calls, and also to take control of my schedule. Absolutely. And that's what probably allows us to do most of the things we do. Like we drove to South Carolina straight through when we went to the World Championships of BMX. That was 20 hours. I didn't do any coaching calls while behind the wheel. Well, I had to make sure that didn't happen. I had to make sure I loaded up my schedule the day before and then, know exactly where I'm going to be. So yes, as unprofessional as it sounds, sometimes I prioritize our playtime over my professional life. But no one cares because it's transparent to them. I tell them when I'm available. They offer to me when they can be available. It either works or it doesn't. Everybody gets 100% of me. Everybody gets value from me when it's time to get value. But I don't let other people take control of that.
Good. What just popped into my head? What information product would you like to see from me?
From you?
Yeah.
Wow. That's one of those questions. It's not like if quick, you got 5 seconds to answer. Snap your fingers. Where in the world would you like to be? Antarctica. Well, it's dead of winter right now. Okay, never mind. Make it, Slovenia. An info product from Derek Loudermilk, to me, would be adventure oriented. Maybe adventure as a business. Doing what we're talking about here. How to run a business as an adventure. I think you have to find the need that people are willing to pay for. And it has to be a pain point, and then solve it for them and keep it to one thing. And you're a very warm, good guy who happens to also be a badass. And I think that's rare. I think you could do well with a product like that for guys. I think you could do well with a product for families on how to live the adventure. You definitely have the credibility. You've done so many amazing things and accomplished so much. I think you've earned the right to be heard. I maybe the bicycle training product, Derek. I mean, you're pretty good at that too.
Okay, yeah. I just wanted to see what your Your thoughts were since you've created 10?
Well, like you said, you and I are kind of kindred spirits. You're like a guy who means well in life, wants to leave the world a better place than you found it, but you still want to milk every adventure out of life, And I think that's cool, and I think that's attractive, and people want that. The question is, how can you solve a pain point with that? And then that's what you would build your program around.
Right.
See, for me, it's guys want to meet women. They're crappy at online dating. They're crappy in the bedroom. Nobody likes them, and they're just not charming.
Plenty of problems.
Et cetera. Yeah, there's all kinds of things. People, the new program for us, frankly, is guys are wimping out on us. They're ashamed to be men. They're ashamed to be bold. They're ashamed to be confident. They're ashamed, certainly, to be dominant. And yet these women are attracted to what they've always been attracted to. And guys, amazingly, the guys who aren't offending women are the guys who are experiencing the most shame over potentially offending women.
Yeah, let's actually talk a little bit about men and masculinity. And so adventurers, like think of the movie. What's the one that takes place in Montana with Brad Pitt, Legends of the Fall? And there's the three brothers, and Brad Pitt is the like playful, adventurous brother. And every guy wants to be, this like charming, outdoorsy, confident, cheerful person. And we all want to be cowboys and explorers and bold and all these things. And I feel like, part of that maybe is what drives me to constantly want to be doing adventures. Sure. And it seems like, a lot of men are bored, or they were told to be polite, either at church or school or corporations or whatever. And they're like conforming and walking on eggshells when they really just want to be free and playful and all these things. So besides like going on trips and being adventurous, like what do you see as the cure for that? Domestication, I suppose?
Well, listen, man, there's nothing wrong with being polite. I think sometimes there's this artificial dichotomy set up between being Mr. Nice Guy and being a bad boy jerk. And I think guys want to swing the pendulum both ways. What you really want to be is a great man. You want to be a man of character. And when you're a man of character, you have a cornerstone belief system that drives who you are and what you do. You do those things even when nobody else is watching. And you stand up for those things. And you defend those things. There are people who have completely opposite sides of you, say politically, but they're both respectable because they believe in what they're doing and they're trying to make the world a better place, and they're going about it from different ways. Now, there are also people who are just all about tearing other people down and self-aggrandizement, and those people are douchebags. Fair enough. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. But guys come to me and they're afraid of women, and they're fearing loss is what they're doing, which isn't a very masculine thing, by the way. That's the opposite of boldness, is fearing loss. Actually, the opposite of boldness, for example, like vulnerability. People think, okay, well, if a possum wanders off into a highway, it's going to get hit by a truck. It's vulnerable. But vulnerability means willing to put your fears aside and maybe getting hit by that truck because you're swinging for the fence for a greater good. Every time a man walks up to a woman he's never met before and introduces himself, he's being vulnerable. And that's the kind of vulnerable women are crazy about. So that's a big cure, is understanding things like vulnerability, sensitivity, why women want a man who listens. It isn't because woman wants you to obey her. It's so that you can understand her, so that you can be more of a man in her life. Being sensitive just means not being boorish and selfish and narcissistic and steamrolling people because you didn't even look around you or take any notice of what's going on with people. It's the lack of compassion that leads you not to be sensitive. Sensitive means you sense things. You understand what's going on. Men, I think, have been vilified by a certain angry percentage of women. Things that have been historically thought of as masculine are now irrelevant in this society, like hunting and fishing and fighting off the warring tribe next door, and men are replacing that with sports and with video games. Again, watching it on TV or a football game is a simulated war. You're defending your territory against the enemy. That's all well and good, but I think men need to realize that you can still be a protector, you can still be a provider, even in the context of postmodern society in the year 2017. But really what it comes down to for men is being able to provide, and that's not having a gold digger of a woman in her life and taking her on shopping dates. That's being a guy who has solutions, a guy who has answers, a guy who can put other people at ease from having to scramble for their own sustenance. That's what you do for your family. Protection. You want the people to feel safe, not just physically, but emotionally. One of the things I've always said is the man most women need to be protected from the most is the guy they're with. That's unfortunate. You're either part of the protection problem or you're part of the solution if you're a guy in a woman's life. And all of that is important. All of that's what plays into it. And I think guys are alienated. I think guys misunderstand the difference between machismo and masculinity as women define it. I mean, you and I can go drink lots of beer and do wheelies on our motorcycle and blah, blah, blah. Women will just roll their eyes because what they want is they want that man who can demonstrate that he is a provider and a protector and enabler of her to be freed up to be feminine, to bring the joy and the playfulness and the fun to the world that women bring. And when we understand that more, I think some of the questions surrounding what you're asking about, because it becomes a whole cluster of questions, doesn't it? I think they all the clouds start parting and the answers appear. You don't have to be a warrior. You don't have to be physically powerful enough to subdue anybody. Well, it's nice if you are. It's cool. But to do the things that make you feel good as a man, what you're doing is you're looking out for women's best interests. You're protecting the people you can protect. You're making their life safer. You're providing for people who need to be provided for. I believe compassion is masculine. And that's because, it takes a man who understands the plight of someone else to want to go make it better. Now, that's not to say women can't be compassionate. I had a woman take me to task because I said that decision-making is on the masculine side of things. It's like, well, I'm an adult. I can make my own decisions. It's like, yes. But remember, it's all about sexual attraction. If you have to make decisions on behalf of a man, you're not going to be attracted to him. Mm-hmm. In other words, if he puts you in the passenger seat of his car and says, where do you want to go on a date? You're not going to be happy. That's the difference. That's why masculinity is tied to that decision making. Because, not that women can't make a decision. Not
but
that
having
they can't
a plan so they don't
themselves.
have to.
It's all about sexual attraction. What makes us horny for each other, frankly. So, women who are in the masculine and women who are power brokers and decision makers and protectors and providers. I mean, that's really cool and all. I think it's neat, but it doesn't make me hot for a woman. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So, meanwhile, a lot of guys are told they need to soften up and be feminine because masculinity is toxic. And meanwhile, the same women telling them that are trying to be more masculine and trying to be more powerful and trying to be providers and protectors. That's a disconnect. That's an agenda. That's a power play. Whereas, yes, I mean, obviously, listen to what we've been talking about even at the outset of this show. I've got a little 5-year-old who's a badass. She's out there beating boys in a rough and tumble sport, and I'm all for it. So, man, I'm not living in the 50s here. I love strong, smart, successful women. I think they're amazing. But I also love feminine women because I just like girls. So my wife, is a very tomboyish, adventurous, smart, successful, and indeed assertive woman, but she's all woman all the time. She's all about the feminine gifts of fun, playful joy. She's all those things. Her bike is her BMX bike is bright pink.
That's brilliant.
Yes. So, I mean, I think that's, men can be masculine. Masculinity is not necessarily evil, whereas femininity is good. Just because masculinity and femininity are opposites doesn't mean they're opposite in every way. And I think that's kind of the logical fallacy that straw man argument's been kind of built into the masculine feminine conversation lately. And I just don't think it's valid. I think men can be virtuous, masculine men, women can be virtuous, feminine women. And that's the way it's supposed to be. But never forget that masculinity and femininity are tied to sexual attraction, not social agenda or oppression or anything like that. If anybody's doing bad unto someone else, that's a matter of morality, not masculinity.
That's a good. Yeah, I like that. That's a good reminder. If you got time, I have one more question, one more topic I wanted to ask you about, and sort of circling back to your family and your kids. and you take them on lots of adventures. You're letting your 5-year-old daughter do this dangerous sport where you can break bones and things like that, and you take them all over the world to developing countries that are, quote, maybe not as safe. So how do you decide what you will let your kids do? Like, how much risk are you willing to let them take on? Things like that.
Well, all right. I think you ask a wonderful question. I think you measure that risk, and I don't think you take unnecessary risks. And I think you have to be educated about what risks really are. People think that if you go to Spain right now, you're going to get run over by a truck and killed. That's just not true, because there's places in America right now where we live where you shouldn't be hanging out and something bad might happen to you here. That's irrational. Most countries in the world are a lot safer and a lot more tranquil than we give them credit for. And we don't do life-threatening adventures, at least not with the kids, and also not legitimately life-threatening. Now, if you take them up in a balloon ride in Cappadocia, or the balloon could pop and you could crash, granted, but it just doesn't ever really happen. I mean, they do really well in Cappadocia not wrecking their balloons every morning. So, you know what? So you take your kids up into a balloon. Yeah, I mean, right. It's bad for, it's just like, when people think if they're afraid the airplanes are going to crash when they fly, it's really bad for business to wreck a $400 million 787 every day. They don't wreck much. They can't wreck much. They'd be out of business. But, like some people won't go on a 14-hour flight because they just can't believe, a plane can fly that far without crashing. They're scared. There's irrational fear. Adventures that I'm talking about. BMXing. If you're a 5-year-old little girl BMXing, first of all, little kids are young. They don't break as easily as older folks like my wife and I. Chalk that up to another reason why I shouldn't get out there anymore. Some of these older guys, they have like 61 and over cruiser derrick.
Nice.
And if there's a crash in the first turn, someone's not getting up. Those guys are crazy. But first of all, Sarah is very good about keeping it on 2 wheels. She crashes very rarely. Second of all, the speed with which the fastest 5-year-old girls in the world go is still pretty limited. Okay, they're not like the elite pros who are in the Olympics, and they're not on those tracks either. Plus, we have her geared up in body armor, and she looks like helmets and Snell-approved helmets, and braces for your neck. And I mean, she can still move, but we take care. We do due diligence on getting her protected.
Yeah.
Still, my son fractured his wrists. Emily bumped her shoulder. But that's going to happen in childhood. Otherwise, you can sit home and be bored and not get out and be active. And kids are sitting home watching Xbox, and they're getting out of shape. And my kids are out there doing sports and doing activities, and they're making friends, and they're building their mental toughness. There's people who think it's unfair to take a 5-year-old and have to get first place or second place or lose. Oh my gosh, you should. But we don't believe in participation trophies in this family. We're just not those people. And the people in the sport aren't either. We believe in building character. We believe if you have a victory, you need to earn it, because if everybody gets the same trophy, it cheapens the victory for the person who really won. My son went and did something that the city was sponsoring, and they gave everybody the same participation thing at the end. And he knew he didn't do as well as other kids. And he comes home and goes, "What's this?" He threw it away.
Yeah.
You either want to build that kind of character in your kid, or it isn't important to you. But when we travel, we don't take them to Syria. We don't take them to war zones. We don't take them. We do take them to places where the food is different and the people are different, and maybe the politics are different. For example, we took them to Jordan and we took them to Kuwait, and a lot of people, it's died down a little bit because people are, basically found something else to complain about. But, a year and a half ago, we took them. There's still a lot of Islamophobia rampant in the United States. How dare you take your children to this Islamic country, this Muslim country? I mean, they kill people like you there. They do not. We've never been treated more wonderfully with more hospitality than we were treated in Kuwait and in Jordan. The people were wonderful. And my kids don't understand why Americans are so negative against all Muslims. They don't understand that. My kids go to Ethiopia and the children look very different there. They're in a very different socioeconomic their situation. They have a different skin color. They have a different religion. They have a different language. They eat different food, and my kids are meeting them. And the little Ethiopian kids they've seen tourists before, but they've never seen tourists their own size. It was amazing to them. Oh. And they're making friends. And my kids come home and they don't, I mean, I don't know if I like the term colorblind, because it's almost like you have to see it and then ignore it. My kids don't care what race you are. They don't care, whether you're a Muslim or not. They just want to, my daughter races BMX with kids who, come from all over the country, boys, girls, all races, all skin colors. She just went to the world championships and was meeting kids from all over the world, literally. And it seems perfectly normal and natural to her. As we're recording this, the country is kind of embroiled in a reminder that we have some people out there who still are racist. I don't think we're more racist than ever before. I think we're less racist than ever before because of the outrage we all feel when a relatively small number of people still act like racists. I actually think ultimately that's wonderful. Such a relatively small measure of racism can cause such wonderful outrage, and people go, how can this still exist? But what's been popular to remind people is we're not born hating. We're not born thinking that people are inferior to us. That's all learned. And by God, we're going to make sure our kids learn that the way they were born was just fine. People are people. Yeah, you need to know how to avoid people of bad character. If you're getting involved with the wrong crowd, you stay away from those people. But that's basically about what someone's about, who they are, what they look like, their culture. All of that is fascinating and interesting. And our kids are already doing a wonderful job celebrating the differences between people and welcoming people. And what's amazing is, even at the local level, I find there's so many other kids who are like our kids, and it's just so cool. It's heartwarming. But we want actively to take our kids all over the world and teach them that what they see on the nightly news on the cable channel is not necessarily what's going on over there. What we're being led to believe isn't necessarily reality. And I know you guys are doing that with Axel too. And he's just little, but as he grows and as he starts talking and you figure out what's on his mind, you're going to be so thrilled, I think, to find that your kids they have such a world vision and see other nationalities and other cultures as fascinating, not something to be feared. You see what I mean? And I think that's what mitigates the danger of it. I mean, the perceived danger of it. Mm-hmm. It's not dangerous to go live in somebody else's world because they're different than Americans. It's just different. It's not dangerous. If I were to take my kids and go wade into a pond full of crocodiles in Louisiana and say, nothing's going to happen, that would be irresponsible. Yeah, if I were to take my kids on an African safari and say, hey, why don't you go run up to that lion and pet it? That would be irresponsible. Frankly, we didn't take our small children on big game, drives in Africa because I do believe they need to be a little older to handle that. But there are certain things you measure it and you go, that's not dangerous. That's perfectly self-contained. Like the indoor skydiving, they're not going to get hurt doing that. It sounds really amazing and extreme, but there really wasn't much to it. It's fun. And it's amazing, but they're not going to get hurt. It's not death-defying.
Yeah, and who knows? Maybe your kids will learn the secret techniques of the Bushmen and learn to walk among the lions without being bitten.
Well, it's funny because the Maasai kids do that. Their young kids are walking. They're amazing, But that's also their culture. That's something they're born and bred to do and be comfortable with. I don't think you just throw your kids total immersion into that when they're not ready, But I think, a lot of things that people perceive as incredibly death-defying really are almost innocuous. Like we did if people aren't familiar with these two things, go look them up. One of them is called the Plank Road in the Sky at Huashan National Park in China, which is billed as the most dangerous hike in the world. Well, Emily and I did that, and you're clipped in double belayed. You're not. I guess belayed isn't the right word, but you're kind of clipped onto a wire. Yeah, you're not going to fall. You have to be.
But that does look very intimidating.
And then there's something called the Devil's Swimming Pool, right, at Victoria Falls in Zambia. Mm-hmm. And you literally jump into the falls and you don't get washed over because there's a rock wall underneath the surface of the water, but you go swim right next to the edge of the, and it was always on my bucket list. And there's no way in hell you're falling over that thing. You know, it's perfectly safe. You can even see the parameters of it. You'd have to literally crawl up on the wall and jump over in order something bad to happen to you. So, I mean, things that seem just absolutely death-defying, like you're on a tightrope walk between, you know, two buildings are really not anywhere close to that when you get to it. They're still neat and cool, but you know, it's not like something where people, you know, routine. It's not like base jumping or anything like that. You know, I'm not going to strap my kid to my back and go base jumping.
Where people regularly, routinely do not come back.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
You got it.
Oh, wow. Scott, this has been a really fun discussion. Like, kind of takes me back to late in the evening, hanging out with you as roommates. So this is really appreciated letting the conversation meander with you today.
Yeah, we talked about almost everything, didn't we? Amazing.
Yep, all the topics, just covered them all. Where can people find you online should you wish to be found?
I think the best place to start is with the Mountaintop Podcast if you're a guy, which you can find on iTunes under Self-Help Sexuality. And then our main website is www.deservewhatyouwant.com, and you can jump off to just about everywhere from there. Emily and I are a lot of fun. We're very laid back. What you see is what you get. You know, we don't play someone else on TV. You know? And, you know, I think that's because we're very secure in who we are, and we like the life we live, and we like who we are, and we love each other. And so if you're into down-to-earth stuff, and you're, you know, people who tell it like it is, we're pretty much WYSIWYG. And that's always been our calling card in the coaching worlds. You know, add us on Facebook. We're easy to find. I'm Twitter. I'm Scot McKay. My name's 1T, SCOTMCKAY. Add me on Twitter. Add me on Facebook. We have a Facebook group for men called Mountaintop Summit, which is a pretty cool name. It kind of just fell into place. And that's growing. And we talk about some controversial stuff on there. And we're also guys, but it's for men of character who just want to be better men and have better relationships with the women in their lives. It's not for guys who are desperate to get a girlfriend. Don't worry about that. You won't be ashamed to see your name up there if, you know, someone finds out you're in the group. It's for men of character. It's something to be proud of. So that's Mountaintop Summit. Come join us. I'd love to get to know you guys and know you're out there. That'd be great.
Brilliant. Yeah, thanks for that. And yeah, I'm in that group as well. So
yeah, you are.
Yeah.
We'll get to know you better.
Yeah, Scott, really appreciate you coming on the show, and I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Yeah, I greatly appreciate the invite to be a guest. It's been wonderful. Thank you, Derek.
Yeah, you're welcome. Bye, Scott. All right. Hope you guys enjoyed that one with Scot McKay. I learned something every time I talk to Scott. It's always fun. And this was no exception. I know that he is active on Twitter, so make sure you thank him for being on the show. Let him know what you got out of the episode, what you learned. Head over to Twitter and tell him thank you, that we appreciate his time. And if you want to connect with me, the best place is Instagram. That's where I spend time on social media these days. And right now, we are taking applications for Adventure Quest 2018 in Bali. It's happening in April. And this is a week-long business and adventure treat. So we have early bird pricing for you guys through the end of this year, through 2017. So check out the Adventure Quest page on derekloudermilk.com. And some of the things that we have on the itinerary are canyoning, rappelling into waterfalls. We're going to be doing some surfing. We're going to climb a volcano and camp out on top. We're going to have a big bonfire, which is going to be a death ceremony. So more on that to follow. If that sounds like something you are interested in, it's been really amazing running these for the last couple of years, and this one's going to be even better. So I'd love to see you there. So check that out. And that is all for today's episode. So now it's your turn to go out there and be adventurous.